right, good evening, everybody. We're going to get started shortly. If anybody has not signed up for public comment for planning and development who wishes to, please, this would be last call for that. All right. The hour of 6:45 having come and gone and a quorum being present, I'd like to call to order the Planning and Development Committee. First item up is approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of January 13th, 2020. Do I have a motion?
Move approval.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the minutes have been approved. The next item is PM1, which is staff recommends approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of January 13th, 2020 Planning and Development Committee. And this is for action. Is there a motion? Second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Does anybody have any additions or corrections? All in favor of approving the minutes of the January 13th, 2020 meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that has been done. We are now item 3, which is public comment. We have 4 people signed up for public comment. It'll be Doreen Price, followed by Greg. I'm sorry, I don't know can't read your last name. Mike Nolan and John Labb. Doreen Price. Doreen, I see you. Doreen Price. We can return to Doreen. Greg, are you present? Hey, Doreen, welcome. It's okay.
I was signing up for this version on City Council.
Sure.
So we're planning and development.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. For P4, I want to speak for something obviously dear to my heart. It's still kind of an open wound. It has to do preserving trees, but doing it in such a way that we actually preserve trees. And there's so many factors that can intervene with the best intentions. So I'm going with the fact that these are the best intentions here, but they need more protection to be done properly. First, you need to have zoning change the rule, which goes back even further than this particular thing with regard to notifying neighbors. We have to go back to notifying neighbors when something's being done because they know the history, they know the problems with the drainage, they know what's planted, they know what is important. If you send somebody there isolated, I can guarantee you they'll make a decision that you may not agree with and live with it for the rest of your life. My tree did not yield easily. Not one branch fell involuntarily. 50-mile-an-hour wind did not knock it down 2 weeks earlier. Every single limb that was cut, every single limb, lowered by 8 people who loved it dearly and saw that with their family, I was 200 years old, but admired it. It was considered the most beautiful tree on the block. You don't rush people in making decisions that are going to have that kind of harm. So whatever you do, do not rush. Second thing is get a second opinion. Please let it be outside the city. I did not know that. I didn't have the time. I was being rushed to do this. I was being rushed to do this because someone was panicking and fearful. I understand fear. That's why I have a dog. But we don't do things in rash ways when there's lots of good reasons. Every expert would tell you that tree was there to stay still for at least another 24 hours. I say that facetiously. So what I'm saying is that make sure neighbors are notified. Make sure when you're looking at an impermeable surface, I can tell you for a fact, you can have things that look good on code, but might not necessarily work. And then you spend the rest of your life trying to fix that. Now, I say that in a harsh way, only to emphasize and not to make problems, because I understand mistakes can be made. What the hardest thing is undo a mistake. So, like my tree, if you can't undo a mistake, or you can never undo a mistake, then please stop rushing into things. And I really appreciate if the council would allow neighbors or people like me the time, because I'm not an expert, and you have great experts. So I have to learn to be an expert in a short period of time. That's hard. So I'm just saying on behalf of trees everywhere that are endearing and the people who love them as well, when you do this for residents, wherever you do this, look at it in a different way than you're currently looking at, because the current way you're looking at it caused my tree to disappear.
Thank you, Doreen. I appreciate it. All right, next is Greg. I'm sorry, I can't read your last name. Is there somebody here named Greg who signed up for item P4? Okay, well, if you're here, come. Just Greg, and it looks like it starts with a C and has an A in there. Oh, okay, welcome. You have 3 minutes, sir. Greg, not yet. Yeah, this is planning and development. Greg, you're up if you want. Greg, did you sign up for P4 item P4 in planning and development? Oh, okay, never mind. All right, next up is Mike Nolan on item P1. Mike, you have 3 minutes.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to present tonight. I am a parishioner of St. Athanasius School. I have one child who's graduated from St. Athanasius. I've have one child that is there today. I'm a member of the Facilities and Maintenance Board and also a member of the school board. I would like to thank the opportunity for being able to comment today. I'd like to thank Eleanor Ravel for the assistance in this matter. I understand you've done a nice job of paying attention to the details to this. Our interests are real simple. It's really in the interest of safety for the children at the school by expanding the parking lot, in modernizing the traffic flow. We also are interested in the safety of the parishioners of the larger St. Athanasius community, particularly the disabled and those that have a hard time getting around the property. We're also interested in maintaining good relations with the community and have gone to great strides to work out something that is amenable to all. We have put a significant effort into this on behalf of the parish and the school, in an effort to reach the best result for all here. However, I just want to remind the committee that we do have limited resources here, and we would like to see some sort of conclusion on this matter. It has been pending for some time. That is all. Thank you.
And then one more speaker, John Lab. You have 3 minutes as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is John Labe. I live at
Sorry about that.
That's Labe. Yeah. I live at 1727. I live at 1726 Chancellor Street in Evanston. I also own the house at 1727 Harrison Street, within 500 feet of the subject property. My wife and I have lived in the neighborhood for 13 years. We have 2 children at St. Athanasius School, and we're parishioners there. I want to speak in behalf or in favor of the proposal for the Eastwood property. The proposal is a modest proposal to change the Eastwood lot. Currently, it has 14 parking spaces and it is otherwise vacant. The proposal is to modify it to have 22 parking spaces, a modest increase. Otherwise, to convert the property to landscaped open space. In my view, this would be a significant improvement to the subject property, making it more appealing both visually and functionally than it's ever been in the 13 years that I've lived in this neighborhood. The second thing I'd like to address are the objections of the ZBA. The first objection was that this parking shouldn't be used for game day. As I understand, the parish has agreed that the parking on the subject property, all 22 spaces, will not be used for game day parking. As far as I know, this is the only entity in the immediate neighborhood that's been asked and has agreed to not have parking on game day. That's a significant concession by the parish. Not just the 8 new spaces, but all 22 spaces on the subject property won't be used for game day renting. The other thing I'd like to address is that some neighbors have complained about the traffic flow there. I think the first thing I'd like to note about that is that the traffic flow is a completely independent issue from the increase of parking at the subject property. The increase in parking is intended to alleviate congestion by increasing the parking available for the staff. There won't be any more parking. There'll just be more space for the parking on a school day. The current traffic flow, it doesn't appear that the ZBA appreciated this, but the current traffic flow is one that the city itself proposed a number of years ago in order to reduce congestion on the city streets, to specifically remove congestion from Ashland and move it primarily into the church's own parking lot. There is a proposal in the ordinance now, a specific proposal that has never been tested, that would call for additional lanes of traffic in the parish lot. And what I would like to ask, and speaking on behalf of myself, my wife, and a number of parents, we just saw this plan last night, is that the ordinance not require any specific traffic flow plan. The ordinance is directed to the specific lot, not the traffic flow. It's really a separate issue. I can understand that the ordinance might require the parish to continue to work with the city on traffic flow issues. The parish has always done so. But I would ask that not require a specific plan that has never been tested. The proposed plan can't be tested because it requires the construction on the subject property before it could possibly be tested. And we have no way of knowing whether the proposed plan would actually work or be safe for the students at the school. And so I would ask just that the ordinance reflect that the parish would continue to work with the city on traffic flow, but not require a specific proposal that hasn't been tested, hasn't been the subject of a special study, and it just isn't appropriate to be in this ordinance.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
your comments. All right. With that, that is public comment. So we'll move now to items for consideration. Alderman Ravel, this is your show. Item
Yeah, I'm afraid so.
P1.
Okay, I move introduction of ordinance 166-0-19, granting a special use for an educational institution, private, and a religious institution, St. Athanasius School and Parish, to expand off-street parking in the R1 single-family residential district. This is for introduction.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
So did we have someone from, did Paul Harvey, or, yeah, would you like to talk briefly about what we're proposing tonight?
Thank you for that invitation to come up and give you a little further information. John Lakota also with me here. John's, Mike Lakota has been employed by us to take a look at the plan, help us with design and overall structure, as well as add some of the Lakota Group's history and expertise. So as you heard a little bit here, what we're trying to do is move forward with what we consider a fairly simple project, which is expanding the parking in one side of our campus and decreasing it during the school hours in another side. So that's just a net zero adjustment. The plan was also to, we were encouraged to go forward with a couple of additional items if the plan moved forward, which it's nice to see. We have been able to move forward, and as noted, Ms. Ravel's been very helpful. So we were asked to do a traffic study. The city helped with that. We moved forward and did just that. A plan is specifically outlined for that flow of traffic on both the public property on the campus site and the campus traffic flow itself. So we are broadly in agreement with that. We do, as you may have heard from John, we do need to go through some testing, but we are going to accept that as a live event once the construction of the parking lot occurs. We will then go forward and do the testing of that plan. There's no other way to do it until we get the construction complete. We think it is a very good step forward, but it needs a little bit of testing. And we've been assured that the city will work with us. If this doesn't work, we will try something else, working with DRPA, working with yourselves. As I've said, we've had exceptional help from the city, exceptional help from Ms. Ravel to move this gently forward and satisfy all those that have questions about it. Mike, anything on the specific?
I think you hit it. I think just the point I'll add is the design we had for 2503 Eastwood it is an expansion, but the current layout isn't ideal. It doesn't actually meet design standards or codes. And one thing about our proposal is we're trying to work within the code. We've asked for no variances except for that this is a special use technically, an accessory use and a special use because it's an institution. So the new plan would actually bring it into conformance with the city's design standards and with zoning as well.
All right, great, thank you. Alderman Revelle, would you like to?
Sure. Well, this has been a long process, and I appreciate the cooperation from the parish in terms of, coming up with a plan. I think that's going to both work well for the school and also for the neighborhood. So just to kind of fill in a few more details, as you recall, we tabled the item in December so that we could do further analysis of the traffic circulation. And my special thanks I have to mention to Rajiv Dal, who, with his expert assistance, really, I think, moved the discussion along a lot. So staff performed 2 traffic counts and really did confirm that during the school pickup time, in the afternoon, there really is considerable congestion in the alley and sometimes cars lining up on Eastwood. So if we could address that was going to be desirable. So to alleviate the traffic backup, we have the updated parish circulation plan that you can see in the packet on page 265. And there are really 3 key components of it. One is that St. A's will ensure that there are no cars parked on the south half of the main parking lot, and that's going to be made possible because we will be approving the expansion of the parking lot, the south parking lot. So then teachers will no longer need to park there because they'll have access to the additional spaces in the expanded parking lot. This is going to create a safer, car-free area during the school hours for the children. And what it's really going to do is, if you look at the diagram, it provides space for 2 side-by-side lanes for cars entering the main parking lot and headed west. So that will provide a second stacking lane for up to 6 to 7 cars to relieve the backup that happens right now in the alley. And there'll be St. A's personnel stationed there to help direct the cars so that everything moves safely for the school children as they're getting picked up. Additionally, as noted on page 268 of the packet, the parish is going to establish and enforce keep clear zones in front of the alley-facing garages with some high visibility cross-hatching striping in front of the garages, so that should also help the neighbors as well. So altogether, in my view, the expanded south parking lot, the updated circulation plan, and the protective measures next to the garages will bring substantial safety improvements for the students during the school day and go a long way towards reducing the traffic congestion at pickup time. I do have one amendment to make to the ordinance itself. And that is on page, it's section 2 of the ordinance, and I didn't know what page that was. And it's basically to delete the phrase and construct a play area that had been in the original proposal from St. A's, but they're not looking to construct that play area. So I move to amend ordinance 166-0-19 to delete the phrase in section 2, and construct a play area.
All right.
Page 261.
All right, so that's been moved and seconded. All in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Okay. And then just to kind of confirm, the parking is still going to be allowed on the north side of the main parking lot for visitors and any overflow parking. It's just the south half of that main parking lot where the traffic's going to be, or cars parked are not going to be allowed during school days. And then, yes, we expect that after the expanded parking is created, and then we can move ahead to implement this new circulation plan. Obviously, St. A's will want to monitor it to see how well it works, and if there needs to be further adjustment, DAPR will certainly want to have conversations to come up with any kind of adjustments that are needed.
right, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of approving item P1 as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, Alderman Simmons, can you move item P2, please? Sorry.
Absolutely. P2, ordinance 3020, granting major zoning relief for parking to retain a basement dwelling unit at 2008 Harrison Street. The Zoning Board of Appeals and staff recommend adoption of ordinance 3020, granting major zoning relief for 4 parking spaces where 7 parking spaces are required to allow the retention of a basement dwelling unit in the R5 General Residential District and the CSC Central Street Overlay District. The applicant has complied with all major zoning requirements and meets all the standards for major variation for this district. This is for introduction.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Alderman Ravel.
So I did walk by the property over the weekend, and there does seem to be ample parking in the back. And given that the building is just a few feet away from a transit-oriented development area where, in fact, this zoning variance would not be required, I'm in support of approving this request.
All right, seeing no further lights, all in favor of item P2, ordinance 3020, granting major zoning relief for parking to retain a basement dwelling unit at 2008 Harrison, please vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes. I'll go ahead and move item P3, which is ordinance 23020, amending Title VI, Cannabis Use Regulations. Plan Commission staff recommend approval of a text amendment to the zoning ordinance to revise the distance requirement between cannabis dispensaries and pre-existing public or private educational institutions that are elementary, middle, or high schools, as well as establish definitions and provisions for additional cannabis uses such as cannabis growers, infusers, processing organizations, transporters, etc., within the city's zoning districts. This is for introduction.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Alderman Rainey.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, I would like to divide this ordinance into 2 parts. One, the distance part, and the other part, the zoning part, having to do with zoning districts in which the various licenses can be, the users can be located. I've been in conversations with several attorneys having to do with representing various users, and also reading up on the various activities of the users. And one of the things that concerns me is, while we talk about the social justice applicants, very few people are going to be allowed a location in Evanston for any of the additional licenses. For example, the craft growers, the infusers, and the transporters. And I don't know what a processing license is. I can't figure that one out. But the other 3 I'm very familiar with. I would like to hold in committee the transport, the infuser, and the craft grower license, and look at the locations and the distance issues and the zoning areas in which we're limiting those to be allowed. As an example, I have been told that there's absolutely no reason why those who are able, and I think there's going to be 40 infuser licenses issued in like the summer of 2020 for infuser. There's absolutely no reason why those licenses, and we'll probably maybe get 1 or 2 at the most, so we're not going to get a flood of them if we get that, why those can't be issued to zoning districts that allow restaurants, that allow bakeries. They're not going to be, the product that they're going to be making things from is not the flower, it's extract. And there's not, It's not going to be like people standing out behind your building smoking weed. It's going to smell more like brownies. It's not going to smell like weed. So for us to limit it for 1,500 feet from something and put it in, over across Oakton where the tow company is, it just doesn't make any sense. So I would like us to hold that piece of it. The distance thing for the regular dispensaries, I appreciate that change. That's an important change. But the location, I think we need to take another look at that. Does it make sense? And we've also said in this ordinance that we can co-locate uses, cannabis uses, but we can't locate any of them unless we want to put a dispensary in an I-2 district. And I don't think we necessarily want to do that because those places are bigger and more expensive than a current retail district. So there's no chance of co-locating two different uses for cannabis. And we're not talking about 10 or 20 locations because we're not going to get those kind of licenses.
Okay, so,
That's my proposal.
So
So we
do you-
divide this and take back the zoning districts.
all right, so do you have an amendment you want to, let's say, what exactly are you trying to do? You're,
I'm trying to.
throw it out there, put a bow on it for me.
What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to allow for it was a plan commission, right? The plan commission determined that the 750 feet from a school was too extreme, and they limited it to 500 feet. I want to keep that in and then take everything else back.
Okay.
I
so-
move that.
Yeah.
I believe,
I don't want to eliminate, I want to work on the rest of it. And have an opportunity to argue it when we don't have so many other things here.
I don't believe that you can just hold part of the ordinance. It can be amended, or it can be amended to achieve the same goal, but just holding part of it isn't.
Well, but the 500 feet is important because otherwise Chicago's going to have a dispensary across the street from where we're not allowed to have it. So I don't know why we can't amend it like that.
Okay, so would you prefer that we hold it entirely? Is that you're saying the options are that we make an amendment or we hold the entire thing? Is that what you're saying, Brian?
Correct.
Okay. What's your preference, Alderman Rainey?
I would like to have it explained to me why I can't amend something like I want to amend it. I mean, that doesn't make any sense, that I can't amend everything out of that ordinance other than that piece of it.
So here's what I would suggest we do. You strike all the uses. If you want to just carry forward with the 500 feet amendment,
That's what I said? Yeah.
strike everything else and we'll come back with a new amendment.
Yes,
Or new ordinance entirely at another meeting.
exactly.
Okay.
Is
Not going to
there
hurt anything. I mean,
a second? Second. All right. All in favor?
aye.
I think, I understand what you're saying. Why don't we just hold the entire thing? I don't think there's anybody
Why?
who's.
The 500 feet is urgent. That's important. People
And-
are applying for licenses.
Are they
need
applying for
the
licenses
500
now?
feet. Yes, they are.
All right.
Okay.
They have locations picked out.
Alderman Ruth Simmons.
How does the, so I'm with you 100% on everything that you're saying, but how does the timeline that we're working with now with the current applicants and approving this 500 feet, will that push back? I mean, I know that the licenses are being approved at the state, right? Would that push back any sort of openings for the retail dispensaries if we hold all of it? Because I'm still not clear on how we implement the social equity piece, and I have questions about, I know that this is a different discussion, but
Every license that will be issued will have a social equity piece. None will be issued without one.
Okay, so how will that impact the opening or the approval of the dispensaries if we wait and hold it all and bring it back together?
Except for Maple Avenue, every other one will be affected.
Johanna?
Any other applicant would have to comply with the 750 feet. They couldn't, because the 500 feet has not been codified, they wouldn't be able to. So that.
I understand that, but where are we at in the process now? So
I'm not aware of specific businesses applying for spaces. I mean, I've heard people interested in things, but nothing that says I have a lease pending because I have a potential license coming down the pike and I'm gonna start the special use process.
is there anybody from economic development or any staff here that can speak to that? Because I know that there is a lot of activity with the social equity candidates in pursuing their goals for a dispensary. And where are they at in the process? I know that they've actually applied. So does the application process include identifying a location for their dispensary?
So the state's process for identifying a location and a license, they have to say that they're going to locate here because it has to meet certain standards. And the challenge that applicants they have to demonstrate that they are zoning compliant in the community that they're locating. So if somebody wants to locate in a location, for example, on Howard Street, where you could locate on the Chicago side because you're 500 feet from the school, but on the Evanston side, we've said 750 feet, so you're precluded, but you literally could go across the street and locate. So I think that's the issue that Alderman Rainey is speaking to. So they could prove that if we made this ordinance change, everything above 6-4-11-4, if we struck everything south of that, then we could move forward with the 500 feet and bring everything copy and paste into a new ordinance and return it the next available meeting and work through those different uses.
So
We don't know who supplied private landlords. We don't know that. They didn't have to come to us.
Well, so that's my question. On the application, do you have to, I mean, it's not uncommon that when you're applying for something, you have to identify the exact location to even make sure that it's compliant with the areas that we have said you can have a dispensary. So was that part of the process that they, said, 1300 Lake Street or named a specific address?
The city of Evanston wouldn't be privy to that information from the state wouldn't necessarily share it. We might know it if an alderman was often an applicant might talk to an alderman and say, this is the space we're hunting and what do you think? And that might happen, or they might check with the zoning office. And we've gotten a number of those inquiries, but we get a number of those inquiries for other uses, as many of you know, that we may not turn into anything.
So to this point, if they did so, our policy said the 750 feet, so they would have identified a place within 750 feet anyway to comply with the application?
They would not be in compliance if they were more than 750 feet, they're in compliance. But if they're
Right, that's
662, they are not.
right. So what I'm saying is, if they did, they would have had to comply by being within the 700. So we need to move. I mean, we don't want to do anything to hold up progress. It's just still unclear.
We determined they're very difficult to find 750 feet away from the school.
Right. So I support Alderman Rainey's amendment to move forward with the 500 feet and hold for discussion the rest of the, is that what you're?
Attorney George? I'm sorry.
I mean, technically, if you're just going forward with it by going forward with the first half regarding the 500 feet and striking the remainder of the ordinance, that's technically, I think, allowed. That's technically allowed, yes.
Okay. Alderman Wilson?
That's what I was going to say.
Okay, all right.
That's what I said.
Okay, so that's your amendment.
Yeah. One other thing. Can you say one other?
Yep.
And the reason I brought up the other issue is because it was brought up to me by several applicants for the 3 new licenses, which is the craft grower, the transporter, and the infuser. People are very interested in that. And they can't locate in these I-2 districts. And the infuser issue is, there's just no reason to stick them in an I-2 district. So I want to talk to our staff about that, and then to the council. So anyway, this is very good. That's what I would like to do, separate the ordinance. Thank you.
And this is consistent with Chicago, that's the 500 feet?
500.
Yeah.
All right, so we need to make an amendment, right?
So
And your
I
amendment is
I
Alderman
move
Rainey.
That we divide the ordinance 500 feet versus the uses, the special use part of the ordinance.
So maybe just, instead of saying divide the ordinance, maybe say strike everything
Strike.
except for 6-4-11-3 revision as to distance.
Okay, is
That's the motion.
there a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? All right, so, all in favor of item P3 as amended for introduction?
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? All right, that passes. Moving on to item P4, ordinance 25020, amending Title 7, Chapter 8, Section 8, tree preservation. City staff recommends adoption of ordinance 25020, amending the tree preservation ordinance 7-8-8 to apply to trees 25 inches in diameter at breast height, DBH, and larger, 20 inches DBH or larger for oak and hickory species on private property when improvements are proposed that are classified as new construction or those that would increase the amount of impervious surface by more than 600 square feet. This is for introduction. Is there a second? Mr. D'Agostino.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Paul D'Agostino, Environmental Services Coordinator. I have a short presentation just to highlight all of the changes that were being proposed for this ordinance. As I said last time, the existing ordinance already protects all public trees unless they're dead, diseased, or dangerous. Any private tree on parcels 2 acres or larger that are up for subdivision, and then any private tree within a planned development. The new part of this ordinance has additional protection for all private qualifying trees on properties that propose new construction of a building or the addition of more than 600 square feet of impermeable surface. And those qualifying trees are as follows. Those are any tree that's 25 inches or larger in diameter within any of the species groups A, B, or C in the existing ordinance, and any oak or hickory species 20 inches or larger in diameter. Again, in that existing ordinance. Those 20 to 25 inch thresholds were chosen based really on what staff thought we could absorb with the existing staff and not have to add people to enforce this based on our estimated number of additional permits that this is going to generate. And other municipalities do have similar thresholds, although there are several that have much lower thresholds. Adding private trees to this ordinance does help to meet our CARP goal to adopt a more stringent tree preservation ordinance. Some other recommended changes in the ordinance in other sections include we're eliminating the tree replacement exemption for landmark structures. We're increasing the tree replacement rates by 25% for all tree species groups. We're increasing the tree replacement mitigation fee from $150 an inch to $250 an inch. We're increasing the distance to protect trees on adjacent properties from 10 feet to 25 feet from the proposed construction. We're increasing the fines for the ordinance violations from not less than 100 and no more than 1,500 up to not less than $500 and no more than $10,000, and we're reclassifying several of the species within the groups based on our experience. And with that, I would be happy to answer questions.
All right. Does anybody have any questions?
No?
Oh, Alderman Fisk.
Thank you. One of the things that I would like to do is I'm concerned about this being specifically to new construction, so I'd like remodeling. So I think some of the problems that have been created in the recent past have had to do with additions to existing houses. Mm-hmm. So so I would like to make sure that the new construction includes remodeling or additions to existing structures.
Well, it does include additions to new structures if it's 600 square feet or larger.
To new structure, you're saying new structures to existing buildings. Is that?
We're saying new construction or an addition or anything to your building that's 600 square feet or larger.
Okay, 600 square feet isn't very big, but.
No, it's not.
Yeah, so that's good. That's good. And let's see. So we've gotten a bunch of feedback, and I want to ask the questions that arrived via email. So one of the other questions was why buildings and not walls or other structures? Can we put another structure in there, like a playhouse or a wall or any kind of new construction?
Right now, it's only if it measures 600 square feet or larger. So, I mean, a wall probably is not going to qualify for.
Okay.
A patio, if it was 600 square feet, would qualify.
Oh, okay. Okay, I think that's what I had. Maybe Alderman Nguyen has other questions.
I think that's generally what I'm concerned about. Other than, Paul, we can't make the diameter smaller without causing too much work for the current staff.
We don't think so, no.
Okay.
As
Yeah.
much as I'd like to.
All right. And I just am seeing an email that came in today about several species that look like they might be missing from the list. Silver maples.
We can add those in.
Okay.
Before
And
the next meeting.
I think someone was objecting to Norway maples, but, I'm not you're the expert on that, so, yeah. So I think that, I think certainly I would like it if we could go to a lower diameter. I recognize, though, the goal is to actually be able to effectively enforce the ordinance. So perhaps we can revisit this sometime in the next few years and see if at that point we should go to a smaller diameter. I'd hate to lose the trees in
Absolutely.
between. Yeah.
Alderman Ravel and then Alderman Fisk once again.
Well, in addition to Alderman Fisk's comments about making sure we're including remodeling and things like that, I'd like it also just to mention pervious surfaces, not just impervious, because if someone puts in a patio that's permeable, but it still is going to eliminate a tree, I think that's a problem. And so I'd like to, because our pervious surfaces don't allow nearly as much absorption of stormwater as a tree can take up. So I would like to not limit it to dealing with impervious surfaces. I agree with that.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
And Alderman Fisk.
Yes. Paul, what can we do in the meantime to ensure that trees are protected, that we've started the discussion, and the concern that was raised was, is there going to be a run to cut down trees between now and when the ordinance is signed?
That's extremely difficult to tell. It's not like we have enough staff to just police tree removals all throughout town. I mean, all I can really say is it's an enforcement issue that we can't really go after right off the bat. I would hope that neighbors would help out, which happens in other municipalities. I've talked to other foresters who say the only reason I knew somebody was taking a tree down is because their neighbor called and complained. Mm-hmm. So I would hope that if somebody starts mass cutting their trees on their property, that somebody would call 311 or forestry directly and let us know about it.
So is there anything that we can do in the 2 weeks between introduction and hopefully passage or action on this? Is there any protection?
I don't know.
Okay.
All right. This is for introduction. All in favor?
Aye.
As amended? We're amending? Yeah.
Or do we have, all right, Paul, do you have everything?
Yes.
You need? Okay, perfect. All right, so this will be introduced as amended?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you, sir. And then our next thing is items for discussion. Anybody? Items for communication? Nope. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. City council start at 7:40.